Hey everyone, my name is Wes, and welcome back to another episode of Terror Talk where I discuss creepy clips online. I created this original horror music to add to the video, and I hope you enjoy it. Be sure to leave your own comments, and when you're done watching, check the description if you'd like to listen to my music without the commentary. Now let's get into it and have some fun.
Ever since I was a little kid, all the older men in my family would take me fishing every opportunity they got. It was like some family ritual. I, being the youngest, meant that I was next in line to become an expert, like all of them claimed to be. The ones who took it the most seriously were my dad and his brother Matthew. Our houses were decked out like the ones you've probably seen on fishing shows. I won't go into detail, but
Do you have any family rituals like that? Let me know in the comments below. I don't really have any family rituals like that per se. I mean, yeah, we do get together for the holidays and all that's traditional stuff. But yeah, let me know in the comments below if you have any family traditions or rituals that you guys have. And I guess a family tradition that me and my family have been doing recently in the last few years is going on a beach house vacation every year or so. And if it's not every year, it's like the year following. But yeah, those beach vacations are a lot of fun. Staying at a beach house is a lot of fun. If you haven't ever done that, I would suggest it because it is really peaceful and relaxing and a great time. So yeah, let me know in the comments what your family tradition is.
if you took a step into my house, you'd instantly be able to tell my parents spend more time on the water than on the land. This is actually his story, not mine. My dad's a pretty hard guy to scare, but let me tell you, whenever he tells this story, it's like he's a different person. He doesn't like talking about it, but every so often, at a family gathering or a special occasion, one of my relatives will ask him to tell it, and he will. My dad's name is John. He was fishing with my uncle Matthew and their close friends Rich, Jeff, and Monty. They had set out early, before the sun had even broken the horizon, heading to a remote spot they had all agreed was prime fishing territory. This place was a couple of hours boat ride from the nearest marina, tucked away in a secluded cove-type area that few bothered to explore. It was known among them for its abundant bass and the occasional pike. The day started like any other fishing trip, with the boat cutting smoothly through the mist rising off the water.
Man, I would hate this. I get seasick so easily. Do you get seasick? Because I really do not do well on the water.
Everyone sharing stories and jokes over the hum of the engine. They anchored the boat in a familiar cove, surrounded by dense forest. Monty was the first to crack open a beer, even though it was so early in the morning. My dad tells me all the time that Monty is his wild friend, the one who tends to drink a little more than he should. They fished for hours, the only sounds being the occasional splash of a lure hitting the water, and their own laughter. Oh, and the occasional crunch of empty beer cans that they were drinking like water. As the day wore on, they had their fair share of catches, each one sparking a small celebration. As dusk approached, the light began to wane. A dense fog rolled in from the water. My dad describes it as the boat literally being swallowed by fog. Rich, who was the most experienced fisherman of the group, kept saying that he had never seen fog so thick. That's how unnatural it was. Jeff, the jester of the group, was almost as drunk as Monty, both of whom were seemingly unfazed by the fog that had ensnared them. It was starting to get dark. They had originally thought that they could just wait out the fog, but it didn't seem to be going anywhere. My dad and Rich agreed that Matthew should just try to drive the boat out of the cove and into the open ocean, where the fog probably wouldn't be as dense. Matthew agreed, but even though he was typically the most cautious, he only narrowly avoided colliding with the shore. He refused to risk further damage to his prized boat. They reluctantly came to terms with the fact that they'd probably have to spend the night on the boat. My dad made the point that they'd need to tell their families about the situation, and of course, they had drifted into an area of the cove that had no signal. My dad needed to handle some business at work.
That would be a pretty spooky environment, wouldn't it? Just a whole bunch of super thick fog coming in like that, and no reception, and the way they describe the fog is pretty creepy, and having to spend the night on the boat too would suck. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I would be pretty pissed. Like, I wouldn't go on this trip in the first place, but if I had to spend the night, I'd be like, Damn it.
So neglecting the problem was not an option. He offered to go ashore in search of a signal, and Rich and Jeff said they'd join him. Matthew would stay back to guard the boat and an increasingly inebriated Monty. My dad, Jeff, and Rich made their way over to the shore and jumped out of the boat, only getting slightly wet. My dad made a point of snagging the emergency flares in the boat, just in case they got lost and needed to signal Matthew to come find them. The three of them made their way into the pitch-black woods, lit only by the shine of their phone flashlights. My dad and his friends have all done their fair share of camping, so it wasn't like a forest scared them too much. They began trekking uphill, hoping that higher ground would give them a better chance of finding a signal. My dad always made a point of emphasizing how dark, yet eerily foggy the forest was. You could practically feel yourself slicing through the fog.
Like, I get that they're trying to find a signal to let their families know, but I don't know. I would feel safer on the boat, not wherever this remote island or whatever the heck it is. But it sounds pretty creepy, doesn't it?
Just as they were adjusting to the dense atmosphere, a series of strange clicking noises began to permeate the silence, first emerging from directly in front of them, before encircling them completely. These sounds were unlike any forest sounds they were familiar with. It was rhythmic yet erratic, as if someone was tapping out a code meant only for the woods themselves. The distinctiveness of the noise made one thing clear: it was human-made. The realization that they weren't alone hit them like a freight train. Rich, the most seasoned of the trio when it came to outdoor survival, whispered urgently for them to turn off their flashlights. "Don't give away our position," he hissed, with a note of genuine concern in his voice. As the lights switched off, the darkness became thicker than the fog. The clicking noises stopped abruptly, replaced by a silence that seemed to weigh on their chests. Time lost meaning as they stood there, frozen, unsure of their next move. I'm sure they were all thinking the same thing. The idea that they might have stumbled upon some kind of clandestine gathering or a woods cult was terrifying. Then, as suddenly as it had stopped, the silence was broken by rustling noises, this time much closer. Then silence again. And then a guttural scream echoed through the trees. A sound so primal and full of anguish that it rooted them to the spot before they could process what was happening.
That would be pretty terrifying, wouldn't it? To hear a blood-curdling scream just coming out of the woods like that. Dang. That would be pretty terrifying.
Rapid stomping noises thundered through the woods towards them. The three men took off, back the way they had came. Acting on fear and pure instinct, my dad fired the flare gun behind them. The flare cut through the fog, lighting the woods up. For a moment, the woods were as clear as day, and the sight that met their eyes was nothing short of horrifying. Illuminated by the flare's red glow was a pack of more than 10 individuals dressed in what could only be described as tribal attire. Some of them brandished wooden spears, but the light from the flare only lasted a split second. Jeff screamed and almost stumbled, but Rich quickly grabbed his arm to keep him upright. My dad describes this part as the most overwhelming feeling of pure terror he has ever experienced. The forest seemed to fight against them as they fled, ducking under branches and jumping over roots. By some miracle, they emerged from the tree line, panting and disoriented but alive. They screamed at Matthew to start the engine, the urgency in their voices leaving no room for question. Matthew complied immediately, and the boat lurched forward just as their pursuers reached the shoreline. In the chaos, my dad fired the last flare into the air, back towards the shore. For a split second, as the flare's light pierced the fog, they saw their pursuers at the water's edge. It was freakish. There must have been at least 15 of them, just standing motionless at the water's edge. The flare's light faded, and it was dark again. Matthew managed to get a safe distance away, and stopped the boat again. After the engine was off, the only sounds were Jeff, my dad, and Rich's breathing. My dad says he wasn't able to process what had happened for nearly an hour. He was functioning off pure adrenaline and survival instincts. They ended up taking turns keeping watch while the others slept, and left first thing in the morning as soon as the fog dissipated. Funnily enough, Monty had passed out before everything went down and doesn't remember any of the details of that night. I still get shivers down my spine when I tell this story. I can only imagine what my dad must feel when he thinks back to it.
That is just crazy, isn't it? And I feel like they were super lucky to get out of there alive, because they could have easily gotten lost in those woods. They could have easily been captured, and I feel like this could actually be a great horror theme, like from a scary movie, that the people in the woods captured them, and now they've been captured and they're stranded on this remote island in the middle of nowhere. That would be a perfect scenario for a scary movie, wouldn't it? I think, but I thought this was a crazy story, and I hope you enjoyed my commentary and my music, and I will see you in the next video.